Well, it's okay. And today we're going to speak about Dresden bombing of the British and American airstrikes, air forces in 13th, 14th February 1945. And well, the title of my lecture is Dresden Prelude. Someone may ask, what do I mean by prelude? I mean the prelude to the Hiroshima and Nagasaki atomic bombing. The airstrike against Dresden in February 1945 and against Tokyo in March 1945 was exactly nothing but prelude to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So let me introduce myself. My name is Nickolai Parkhitko. Well, you can see it here. I'm PhD in history and assistant professor of the Dresden University and Financial University under the government of the Russian Federation. Also, I am the member of the Russian Military Historical Society. Well, the topic of Dresden, the problem of Dresden, is the crucial historical topic of my doctoral dissertation. I'm working on it just at the moment, and I'm planning to write it till the end of this year, maybe the earlier next year. Well, if everything will be okay with it. So today, a few words about our goals. Well, our today's lecture is devoted to the analysis of the British-American airstrike against Dresden, as I have already told you. When working on this topic, I took into consideration such factors like military, political, and psychological aspects of the American and British highest command decision to strike the city. Also, I researched or investigated such military concepts like bombing terror, carpet bombing, which were worked out in Britain and United States of America during the interwar period, and as well as the firestorm technology, later tested by the Royal Air Force on Hamburg and Dresden, we're talking about today. American Air Force has also used this technology during the airstrike against Tokyo in March 10th, 1945. Well, today we're going to talk also about the statistics. As a researcher, as a historian, I'm going to seriously argue the statistics adopted today as official, both in Germany and in the European Union. And I hope I'll offer you the persuading historical argumentation so that you could get the topic better. Well, here you see some rhetoric question. The end justifies the means. Any military operation has the purpose or the crucial task of damaging both the infrastructure and the manpower of the enemy. Well, this also allows for a certain margin of error, which in the military manuals of the US and other NATO countries, it is referred to as the collateral damage. It is called as the collateral damage. Well, this concept includes some kind of accidental casualties among the civilian population resulting from the ongoing military operations. So, any such kind of operation is calculated, well, it should be calculated, I guess, as the ratio of efforts and resources spent on its implementation to the military damage inflicted upon the enemy and the collateral damage not included in the operational plans. If such kind of damage is equal or maybe greater than the military result expected from the operation, such operation should be cancelled as early as maybe at the planning stage, I guess. So if we're talking about Dresden, no bombing should occur as a fact. Here I mark that the Allies bombed the city only twice during the Second World War. It wasn't in the list of the priority strike goals. Please don't be confused about this photograph, because this photograph is a contemporary, well, relatively contemporary rail station in the Kaiserhof. It's one of the biggest railway stations in Eastern Europe and in Europe on the whole. This photograph was made in 1968. Well, you can see the contemporary plant over there on this picture. But the main thing you should pay attention to is the number of railways here at this station and the number of trains staying here. Well, the same picture referred to 1945, 1935, well, 1915 maybe. And the same picture we can observe, or we could observe today if we looked at this station. So the strategic sensitivity of this station is very high. That's the fact. But the problem is that this station was not damaged at all during the greatest bombing raid in February 13th. So if you look at these three pictures, well, I'll give you some comments on them. The left picture over here, that's the picture from American military documents, from the documents of the American General Staff, or the Committee of Generals. And it was introduced shortly after the war in 1951. Here, where you see some areas totally marked with the red color, yeah, in the middle, in the center, that's the areas which were destroyed in 100%. The level of destruction there was about 100%. Well, maybe 98 till 100. The areas which are marked over here, the level of destructions, well, once again with the red color, the level of destructions was about 75 till 90%. And the blue areas, you can see them over here, over here, over here, and over here. These blue areas, they refer exactly to industrial areas of the city, because, as you know, all the European cities are very alike. Some urban civilian areas are in the historical center, and the industrial and commercial areas are in the suburbs of the city. So here the level of destruction is about 20 till 50%. So you see, once again, this object should have been destroyed as maybe as the first or as one of the first ones. But it remained untouched. This very picture in the middle, that's the photograph made from the airplane. I guess it was an American airplane, just a few days after the bombing. And you can see 1, 2, 3, 4 you can see 4 bridges over Dunai, which are not destroyed at all. But these bridges should have been the priority object of the airstrike. So, and at the same time, you see the surface, which is very like the moon surface. So it's very hard to identify the city here. It's just the mass destruction. Well, as for me, I just know this city. That's why I can say that here is, for example, the Ostrogege stadium. You can see it over here, once again, on the right picture. And you can see the national park here. Yes, it is here. You can see the lake here. That's like an orienteer. But on the whole, the city is totally destroyed. But not the bridges, not these strategic objects. And the last picture over here, that's the picture from the historical book. It's, as far as I know, a book for a class book, which was used in the former GDR Republic. That's the book from the 70s or 80s. I'm afraid to be mistaken, but my friends gave me this picture from that book. And so East German pupils, they were studying history using this map. So once again, red objects are totally destroyed, orange objects are destroyed about 90%, and some objects, well, in the suburbs, may be destroyed till 50-75%. So the bombing on the 13th February was extremely hard. About 796 Lancasters and 9 Mosquitoes flew out into waves and dropped about 1,500 tons of high explosive bombs, and then something like 1 and 2,000 tons of incendiary bombs or fire bombs. The first attack was carried out by the 5th Group of the Royal Air Force, which used its own targeting and tactical methods. And then Pathfinder aircrafts marked sport complex Ostrogege, as I showed you. They marked it as the starting point, and all the bombers passed through this benchmark point, fanning out along the paths and dropping bombs after certain periods of time. The first bombs were dropped at 22:14 of the Central European time. At this moment, the clouds covered the ground, and the attack, during which the Lancasters dropped about 800 tons of bombs, was a moderate success, if we can say so. And 3 hours later, the second attack was carried out by the 1st, the 3rd, and the 5th and the 8th groups of the British Royal Air Forces, with the latter providing aim by standard methods. By that time, the weather improved, and 529 Lancasters dropped about 1,800 tons of bombs from 1:21 to 1:45 after midnight. But that wasn't the end. Because on the 14th February, since 12:17 to 12:30, more than 300 of American Boeing B-17 Flying Fortresses, they dropped about 700 71 tons of bombs. They dropped them on rail parks and bridges. As we see, the airstrike against bridges was unsuccessful. And on February 15th, the American aircraft dropped about 500 tons of bombs on the burning city. So here we can see the destructions. And now a few words about the firestorms. You see, the bombing of Dresden was carried out using the methods tested over the German cities, such as Hamburg, for example, in 1943. But at that time, the methodology was the same. Firstly, high explosive bombs were dropped to destroy the roofs and to expose the wooden structures of the buildings. Then fire bombs were dropped and caused massive fires. And then the whole city was on fire. There is an opinion, and it's a great mistake. I can tell it as a historian. There is an opinion that that were the United States which implemented firstly napalm bombs in Vietnam, but that wasn't the United States. That was Great Britain, and they were using the so-called fuel bombs. They used them firstly in Dresden in February 13th. These bombs contained a mixture, well, that was primarily napalm, that ignited at the initial contact with oxygen, regardless of the environment. So it was almost impossible to extinguish such a fire with plain water, and that was used by the municipal fire brigades under the attack without special firefighting means. So that's not surprising that the firestorm outburst and destroyed the city even in the most catastrophic consequences than the bombs did. The last bombing wave used the high explosive bombs, this time just to obstruct the work of fire services. And as you can see here, the bombings formed a firestorm with a temperature reaching 1,500 Celsius. Well, under this temperature, is it possible for anything alive to survive? I won't say in this fire, I'll say in this city, or even in the area, just in the area of bombing. That's again a rhetorical question. Some historical parallels. Well, I guess that most of you like to travel. Some of you highly likely have visited Italy. Maybe some of you have seen the city of Pompeii and the volcano Vesuvius. And if you went on an excursion in that city, you could see this terrible picture of the dead people. Of course, that's the mannequins, or maybe that's some kind of reconstruction. But there is one strange thing. If you look at the left picture or at the mid picture, you can see that all these people are lying in the same pose. And on the left and on the right pictures, you can see that their heads are lying on their hands. What does this situation mean? This situation mean that these people didn't burn, they suffocated. They just suffocated. And the same thing was technically reconstructed in Dresden. And not only in Dresden. The method of firestorming was 100% or maybe 200% more effective than just using firebombs. And that's why I bring you here, demonstrate you here this historical parallel. But in the case of Pompeii, this phenomenon had a natural character, as I mark it here. But the doctrine of bomb warfare against the enemy population, so I strictly underline this, the enemy population that was formulated on the ending stage of the First World War by the British Air Marshal Hugh Trenchard, and it was implemented by excuse me, it was implemented by his follower Sir Marshall Harris during the Second World War. Well, once again, we're talking about the matter of economy. In this case, the consequences of airstrike, the consequences of mass destruction of the cities was so great that it couldn't be in any way compared with those of using just ordinary weapons like firebombs or fuel bombs. Here you can see the consequences of the German bombings against civilian cities in the Second World War. Yes, Guernica and Coventry, and here it is, I guess, Amsterdam, and of course, Russian city of Stalingrad. They suffered heavy losses, heavy civilian losses, and the destruction was tremendous. But on the other hand, the destruction wasn't, well, the destruction in Guernica and Coventry, and that's Rotterdam on the right. That's Rotterdam here. The destruction of these three cities was not that total as it was in Stalingrad, but in Stalingrad it's some kind of exclusion because the city was bombed by 600 of German airplanes, and it was totally destroyed in August 23rd, 1942. The number of airplanes which were simultaneously striking Guernica and Coventry and Rotterdam is 2 or 3 times lower. And they were using just ordinary firebombs and high explosive bombs. The number of losses was about 1.5, 2.5, 3, or maybe 5,000 people in these cases, and something about 30,000 people in this case, in the case of Stalingrad. But once again, if we take into consideration the number of German airplanes, it is clear for us that it couldn't be others in this situation. And now look at the German cities. Here you see Köln, here you see Hamburg, and here you see Dresden. Well, the first question, can you identify these cities in 1945? Can you separate one city from the other? Can you divide them? Can you say, where is Dresden, where is Hamburg, where is Köln? If we had no notes here, well, it would have been a very big difficulty for me to identify these cities, because they are totally destroyed and they look the same. So the percentage of destruction is great. And here you can see also some data that Bingen am Rhein was destroyed about 90%, Magdeburg 90%, Dessau 80%, Chemnitz 75%, and so on. And that was not the matter, and that were not the consequences of using just high explosive or fire bombs. That's the result of firestorms. It's impossible to destroy the city using just bombs, or you should use several thousands of airplanes to make this picture. That's the result of firestorming. Now, to the question of civilian losses in Dresden. I used to speak with these, in fact, respectable German researchers, with Mr. Matthias Neutzner and Alexander von Plato. I was emailing with them, I was talking with them, and unfortunately, I couldn't get the adequate answer from them. How can they prove, or how can they explain the number of civilian losses which they proclaim in their research works from 18 to 25,000 people? Well, you remember about the methodology of destruction of the city. I guess you remember about the temperature, about 1,500 Celsius. Yes? I guess you remember about the number of planes involved in the military operation. What can we say about 18,000? Can it be? Can it be possible? And unfortunately, I came to the conclusion, and I strongly believe that I am mistaken. I want to be mistaken. But unfortunately, I came to this conclusion both logically, historically, and by means of studying all the documents which are relevant nowadays. So my number of civilian losses, it varies within the range of 100 to 135 or even 150,000 of dead. Because if we look at this map, and do you know where I have got this map? This map was introduced to me by Mr. Matthias Neutzner. He gave this map to me. That's his map. And this map is totally correct. Totally correct. That's a brilliant map. Here you can see the area of total destruction. Here you can see the area of firestorm. And about 70% of Dresden's population was concentrated in this very area. Here, you see? And this triangle, it's a so-called hell or helix triangle, where nothing could survive. Nothing. And about 2,000 people were concentrated here. 200,000, excuse me, 200,000 of people were concentrated here. And about 500 thousands of people were concentrated here. And the whole population of the city at that moment, and the whole amount of people who were in the city at that moment, was varying between 700,000 and 800,000, including the refugees, including the military troops, including those wounded who were concentrated also in the city military hospitals, and so on. So these researchers, they introduce a very relevant and correct map on the one hand. But on the other hand, they give, a fantastic number of 18 to 25,000 people. Why do they do so? So once again, I want to be mistaken, but I think that the main reason of their conclusions and the main goal of their research was not to prove and not to find out the real number of those who were killed in that action, but their crucial goal was to improve historical relations with their today's allies, Great Britain and United States of America, in order to improve political conjuncture, to follow political conjuncture, but forgetting about historical logics and about their history at all. That's the price of lacking independence, which we can observe today. Their independence is their weakest point nowadays. Not just national independence of Germany, but also spiritual independence, historical independence. That's also the matter of consciousness. And the results of this research are the following. Now, that's the terrible photograph which I took from the National Archive of the Russian Federation. Here you can see two German soldiers here in the right part of the photograph over here. And just imagine the number of those who are dead over here. Well, when I was discussing, until this discussion was interrupted by my German partners, as I was discussing this topic with them, I supposed that the number of 18,000 refers to this picture, because here are the people who were identified after this fire, after the firestorm, after that catastrophe. So if they were talking about 18,000 of people over here, well, I can believe it. But that's not the whole number of those who were killed in that action. Well, now I'm working on my doctor research devoted to this problem. And my crucial goal is not only to prove the true number of civilian losses in Dresden, but also to introduce an innovative historical methodology, which I call the inclusive methodology. Well, I call it both in Russian and in English. In English, it's clear, inclusive methodology. But in Russian, it's called инклюзивная методология. Well, the same thing. That's the interdisciplinic or polydisciplinic methodology of research, which is usually implemented in technical researches, But I want to be maybe to be the first historian in the world who is going to implement this methodology in historical research. When I tell inclusive methodology, I mean not just the methodology of historical research or social research, but I also mean the methodology of chemical sciences, physical sciences, biological sciences, military sciences, psychological sciences, and about 12 types of sciences are concentrated in my research. And using this methodology, I want not only to prove and to find out the true number of the civilian losses in Dresden 1945, but also to use this methodology in science in order to find, or not just to find, to follow maybe the ongoing political events in the Middle East, in order to find out the number of losses in the Gaza sector, for example, or in the Iraq War of 2003, or maybe in Afghanistan, and so on. Because, a huge list of documents is still closed, being top secret. A huge list of highest officers cannot spread any kind of information and cannot share any kind of information because of their duty, and once again, because of the secretness. And so, if such methodology existed, I think that it could help the researchers, and not only the historians. It's inclusive methodology. So I think that military researchers can also be involved. It will help researchers to reveal the number of civilian losses in ongoing military conflicts all over the world. Well, that's my big goal. But my small goal is just to find out the true number of civilian losses in Dresden. Also, as a historian, I should say with pity that today, well, every day, I guess every day we are forcing some historical falsifications, manipulations, sometimes, as Mr. Trump says, fake news, and so on. And history is such a science which doesn't tolerate any manipulations or falsifications. And when some researchers tell me that only 18,000 of people were killed in Dresden, well, I can call it nothing but falsification. Well, thank you very much for your attention, dear friends. Now, I would like to discuss this topic with you. If you have any questions, have something to say, I would be grateful. Please.
Yes, I would like some questions. One question to just a comment, actually.
Okay.
When you mentioned that there's the low numbers that the authority, the Germans are citing, it reminds me of the of a survey that was done in Japan about who was responsible for the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombing.
Yes, it is.
Not the majority of the people, I think it was over 75% of young people said that it was the Soviet Union, when in fact the Soviet Union did not have the atomic bomb in 1945. If I remember my history lessons correctly, it was 1949 that they did acquire it.
Yes,
so
that's correct.
It's almost like they don't really know. None of them know actually that it was the Americans that bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and they never mention anything during the commemorations in August. about the American role in the destruction of those two cities.
Yes, thank you very much for your comment. Well, unfortunately, it is so. Unfortunately, it's the matter also of miseducation of the Japanese pupils. Of the
I think it's everywhere.
yeah,
Everywhere.
yes, yes. It's a global problem. It's a global problem of the Western community. But on the other hand, Japan doesn't refer to the Western community.
No.
But nevertheless, Japan is being occupied by U.S. military forces and navy, and that's the consequences of their occupation and of their social policy.
Yes, but I think, sorry,
Mhm.
it's just because I myself, I studied at McGill University. I majored in history and political science, actually Russian history and Soviet history.
Okay.
And back then, we did have good teachers, and they did teach about the losses and everything like this. But of course, some of the topics were not covered at all. So it was not a complete education,
Mhm.
but it was not as bad as it is today, where people think that America won the Second World War, which is in fact not true. We know that.
Yep.
Yeah, they're mixing the responsibility of those who started the Second World War. And you know how it is called in psychology and sociology? It's called the Orton window. The Orton window it is. It's not a historical science. It's just the matter of Orton window.
Yes.
And once again, thank you for your replics, because you know, the second article which I wrote on this topic just after Dresden. Once again, you see here Dresden Prelude. And the second article was called Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the crime that could have been avoided.
Yes.
And I wrote about bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, especially of Hiroshima. Yes, Mr. Truman wanted to demonstrate Soviet Union that the United States of America have got atomic bomb. Yes, he wanted. And if he wanted to do that, maybe it would have been the better way to do that in some of the numerous isles of the Pacific Ocean, of not populated isles, or maybe on some small isle with just a small Japanese garrison over there, so that the number of losses could be about 200-300 of military. But no,
Yes.
he wanted to demonstrate the consequences, what he could do with any Soviet city, like Vladivostok, maybe, like, well, I don't know, maybe even Moscow. We don't know that now. And the
Well,
second bomb, Nagasaki, that was a plutonium bomb. That was the much more destructive bomb. It was just a matter of technical test. That's why this bomb was dropped on this city. And I consider this bombing as a military crime also, not demonstration, but crime.
Mhm.
That's my article. That's my second article. And if you are interested, we can speak about that next time. So the next lecture may be devoted to the problem of using of atomic weapons. The only country, the only nation that used it today is the United States of America. We hope it will remain so.
well, the Americans, when you look at the history of the United States, it was created on a genocide. So they are very used to that, because that's all they do. When you look at all the wars that they have created since 1945, you can consider them, all of them, as genocides. Look at what they did in Vietnam, in Laos, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, Syria, Iran. They're genocidal people. And that's the source. When you look at the Second World War, they got a really good taste of it with the destruction of Germany like that.
Yes, and now they're teaching the whole world what democracy is. The irony is here.
Yes.
And my favorite book is, my favorite book is The Untold History of the US.
by Peter.
Peter Kuznik. Peter Kuznik.
Yes, Kuznik. Yes, yes.
Yes, there 2 volumes already. 2 volumes of 2014 and 2019 or maybe 20. I'm afraid to be mistaken, but there are 2 volumes already. I
Yes.
got both of them. They're at home. They are lying on my. They are staying in my bookcase.
Mm. Yes.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for comments. Any other comments? Any other opinions, replics, questions?
My apologies. I'll probably think of a better question after this ends. But if I'm able to take a shot of the slide on the bridge,
Well, excuse me, some problems with the connection. I can't hear you.
I will. Sir, I would like to ask a better question later. But for now, I would have to, if I can maybe take a screenshot of the slide with Uncharted and Michael A. Harris.
Just a moment.
If still can't make it.
Which slide?
I'm sorry. Which one before?
This one?
No. Up. Next.
This one?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes. I don't have a better question. Sorry, I don't have a better question right now.
Well, unfortunately, I can hear you very bad.
A fantastic letter. Thank you.
Okay. You just wanted to see the slide, yeah?
Yes.
Please take it. Please get it.
Let's
Well,
see.
I think some of us, or maybe that's my problem with the connection, but as far as I can check, my connection is 85%. It's okay, I guess. Well, I was hearing very well the previous speaker, yes, and I don't know what's the
Essentially, I know.
was some
Yeah.
problem. Wait, just a moment. This slide. You asked, yes, please.
It's very.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you and even see.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay. My name is Michelle, and I am an American. I am also former military.
Great.
I really enjoyed this very informative history lesson on today, and thank you so much for sharing this. I believe I have some other Americans listening, so I may get into their doghouse and they know what that is. But I have always been very, how you say, pessimistic, I think is the word. I am not one to believe everything I see. I was told that I did not believe something stunk unless it was smeared on my face. So when I see many things in my country, I always took it with a grain of salt, even in the military. And so my children, because of our what they were teaching in our schools, I'm a very spiritual person. God told my husband and I not to allow our children to go to the public schools. And so we did what was called homeschooling. We homeschooled our children at home. We taught them at home. And there are a lot of things we found. My husband was studying to get his PhD, and we found that there are a lot of resources that you don't have access to until you get on that level of education.
Yes, it is true. Yes.
Yeah. And so we actually use those materials to teach our children. And some of the things that we found out in doing the research was quite appalling, to say the least. And so after a while, and because I travel abroad, we always told our kids, look, no matter what history you learn here, you have to understand that outside of the borders of the United States, there are other countries and other people who had histories taking place during the same time that your quote unquote history was taking place. So there are other histories that were taking place simultaneously, and that your country's history was not the only history that is documented. And so as we grew up and we learned and we learned and we learned, we began to find out that a lot of our people have been lied to. There's just been a major shift. There's a, what do you call it, social media called TikTok here, and a big change came, and everybody had to go to the Xiaohongshu, I think it is, a red note, to China. And when the masses went to China, a lot of them, we were welcomed with open arms, if you will. And we began to communicate with the Chinese, and we began to learn about their culture. And the one resounding theme that we noticed that all the Americans were saying was that we've been lied to. We were told that China was this, we've been told yada, 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 yada. And it's not true. It's not true. They've lied to us, yada, yada, yada. And so this interesting information that I'm learning here today is not very surprising at all. And so I'm just thankful that I had the opportunity to listen. And I will pray that you are successful, because this type of multifaceted, inclusive research that you plan to conduct on a worldwide scale would be astounding, to say the least. But I would admonish you to be prepared for war in the process. And thank you again for sharing.
Dear Michelle, thank you very much for your opinion, for kindest words. Thank you very much. So I'll do my best. Both in conducting my research and also in preparing the following lectures on the coming topics. And I totally agree with you. That everything you have just said is just the matter of the history interpretation. So there are no bad countries, and of course there are no bad peoples in the world. There are bad historians. There are bad historians and bad interpretations of history. And also, one of the greatest problems for all of us is the problem of stereotypes.
Yes.
We are all adults here. We are all, everybody thinks that he's clever, that he's well educated, that he has his personal opinion. Well, that's okay. But what about the stereotypes? The stereotypes are being formed by school, by university, and in fact, all the stereotypes are imposed on us by ideology. Whatever we want that or not, whether this ideology exists or not. Well, officially, maybe you know that there is no ideology in Russia nowadays, but I'm sure that it exists. And please, one small example. Do you know what a hedgehog is? Yes? Just a very small hedgehog, yes, he is walking somewhere in the forest and eating something. What is hedgehog eating? What is he, or what is it bringing on its back when it comes home? What is it bringing? Well, what does it carry?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Well,
I know what it is, but I don't know what it is.
Look at the picture. If you just look at the picture, usually you'll see there a mushroom.
Oh, an apple.
Yes, an apple. Yes, an apple, a mushroom. Well, maybe some grass and so on. That's why if we just say the word hedgehog, we automatically see a mushroom or an apple. But that's a greatest mistake. I don't know whether there are biologists between us nowadays here in this section or not. But a hedgehog, just a moment. Just a moment. I have some problem with. Okay. So a hedgehog is a predator enemy. Not enemy, but animal. As a predator animal. It eats mice. It eats rats. It eats snakes. So I usually ask my students, my adult students, what a hedgehog is. They usually say, oh, he's so pretty, he's so kind. Why do they say so? Not because they're so stupid. So everyone is stupid here. Not, of course not. They say so because they were educated, they were brought up by means of reading books, by means of visiting school. And at school, the teachers told them about such a kind animal, hedgehog, but it's a predator. And nobody knows about that because he is living in the nature of stereotypes. That's a very small and maybe a funny example. But if we can't give the answer what a hedgehog is, how can we estimate the global historical process without being involved in the great mass of mistakes connected with stereotypes, with historical stereotypes? But it's not the worst problem. The worst problem, I have already mentioned, is the problem of historical falsifications and manipulations. And my main goal is to struggle against this evil, I would say so. Maybe a bit with pathos, but it's frankly. Well, dear friends, thank you once again for your attention. Thank you once again for your questions. And I hope,
thanks, Nickolai.
yes, I hope we'll see you soon. Maybe the next lecture will be devoted to the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, if you want. And we'll discuss it with our curators. I think that everything will be okay. And
Yes, I'd be very interested to hear that talk.
Yeah, me too.
yes, very well, very well, very well. So thank you very much. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nickolai.
See you soon.
Okay, thanks, Nickolai.
Yes.
Thank you.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you. Bye.
Всего доброго. До свидания.
This